In this audio lecture, we shall discuss another topic, the Jim Crow laws and segregation, which would again help us understand the social and historical context of the novel. Now, what are these Jim Crow laws? The Jim Crow laws were a number of laws which required racial segregation in the southern United States. These laws were enforced in different states between 1876 and 1965. In fact, these Jim Crow laws provided a systematic legal basis for segregating and discriminating against African Americans. And as I said, all these were enacted in the late 19th and early 20th centuries after the Reconstruction period. As far as the practice of these laws are concerned, they made it compulsory. They made, racial segregation, that there should be racial discrimination, racial discrimination should be practiced in all public facilities in the states of America. Jim Crow laws were upheld in 1896. Moreover, public education had been segregated since its establishment in most of this Southern America after the Civil War. Now, as far as this legal principle as of Jim Crow laws is concerned, it means that racial segregation or this racial separation should be extended to public facilities and transportation, including trains and buses. In fact, the facilities that were given to Afro-Americans and Native Americans were very, very inferior compared to the facilities that were given to the white Americans. Hence, it can be said that as a body of law, Jim Crow institutionalized economic, educational, and social disadvantages for African Americans and other people of color, like even other people were disadvantaged on the basis of their race, on the basis of their color, living in the South. So, since it mandated the segregation of public schools, public places, and public transportation, along with, the segregation of restrooms, restaurants, and drinking fountains for whites and blacks. So it led to a complete discriminating social situation. And you should remember that whoever, tried or attempted to go out to violate the Jim Crow laws, to defy Jim Crow laws, they were often met with violence and death. So we can say that the roots of Jim Crow laws began as early as 1865. So to say, late 19th century. We even come across, black codes. And what were these black codes? These black codes were strict laws which detailed on where and how slaves who were freed could work and how much money or how much compensation would be given to them. So all this was detailed by the black codes. And there was there was an intention behind these black codes. These black codes actually, appeared throughout the Southern America as a legal way to put or to make black citizens servile, to take away their voting rights, and to control where they lived and how they, traveled from one place to another, and at the same time seize their children for the purpose of labor. So, as we can see that these black codes were meant, or these black codes completely aimed at dominating, subjugating black citizens, not only in the field of their work, but also their life was controlled, because it was not in their hands. Everything was controlled as to where they would live, how they would travel. And it is really something very, it is really an ignominious action where children were also seized. Their children were taken away from them for the purpose of labor, to make them work. So this entire legal system, as you see, it was completely framed against, it was structured in a way that everything went against black citizens or the African Americans. In fact, this legal system was such that it also made it difficult for African Americans to win court cases, and ensuring at the same time that they become victim of these black codes. With time, what happened? The Jim Crow laws reached the cities, and it spread around the South with even more force than before. Even public parks, even Afro Americans were not allowed to enter public parks or theaters, and restaurants were also segregated. And with the turn of the century, that is early 20th century, we know that Jim Crow laws appeared around the late 19th century, and with the turn of the century, it saw that it affected these Jim Crow laws. It expanded to such an extent that it began to affect every section of daily life. It did not allow African Americans from living in white neighborhoods. Just imagine. Even they were not allowed to dwell where the European Americans lived. Even for public pools, segregation was enforced, be it phone booths, hospitals, asylums, and residential homes for the elderly and handicapped. So everywhere, in every sphere of life, Jim Crow laws seemed to reach and exert its influence. And it appears, from this, that the life of the Afro-Americans became so cocooned. In fact, it is quite surprising to know that, there were some states who demanded separate textbooks meant for black and white students. Even marriage and cohabitation, that is staying together between whites and blacks, was strictly forbidden in most southern states. And nobody would be surprised if they would see, signs which were posted at town and city limits warning Afro-Americans that they were not welcome there. So it was so explicit. Everything happened so explicit. Everything happened so explicitly, so openly, that that people would not be surprised to see that a poster is given which says that Afro-Americans are not welcome there. Hence, we can see that these Jim Crow laws completely uh, enforced this racial segregation in the southern United States, thereby making the life of African Americans a miserable one.